transportation project has four main periods, beginning with planning and project delivery at the top. This encompasses long-range planning, spot and STIP programming, preliminary engineering, which consists of two main segments of environmental planning and design, right-of-way acquisition, and utility relocation. Procurement and letting is focused on proposal development, leading to advertisement and eventually award of authorization of construction contracts. The third is construction and contract administration. This is focused on the inspection, oversight, and ultimate construction and ultimate delivery of construction contracts. And then finally, maintenance and operations, which is the longest period by far, which will be discussed immediately afterwards. Looking at long-range planning, the long-range transportation planning process is structured to advance projects from conception to funding, and the process produces plans with three time horizons to meet state and federal requirements. The first is the 30-year Comprehensive Transportation Plan, known as the CTP. It's typically developed at the county or multi-county level, and it encompasses rural and urban areas. These are state-required plans and identify long-term transportation needs. The 20-year Metropolitan Transportation Plan, MTP, is typically developed by MPOs and coordinated with NCDOT staff. These plans are federally required and they must be fiscally constrained. The capital and operational projects identified from CTPs and MTPs are submitted through NCDOT's prioritization process through STI, and is used to develop the 10-year STIP. Federal highway approves the first 4 years of the STIP, and federal law requires state and local TIPs to match and be fiscally constrained. I'd like to highlight major pre-construction activities for you. Each project requires some involvement from these disciplines that I will mention. But first, a summary of the pre-construction phase of a project can be pictured in 5 main areas shown here. Pre-construction and preliminary engineering is dynamic and can be unpredictable, as there are many interested parties with at times competing interests. The ultimate goal is to deliver a project from that conception, ultimately to letting and award the construction contract to a contractor. The preliminary engineering phase begins in earnest when a project is scored and enters the STIP or is programmed for delivery with maintenance funds. This is a summarized way to view the main pre-construction activities that NCDOT uses as it approaches project delivery. You see these 4 main stages that are shown. First is project initiation on the left. This consists of concept development, conceptual design, and cost estimating. And this stage concludes with a project scoring and being funded into STIP for preliminary engineering. The second stage encompasses the work to complete all environmental planning and development of designs, allowing the project to progress to a point where the department may begin to purchase the necessary right-of-way and easements. The third stage includes final design activities, completion of right-of-way acquisition, environmental permits being secured, and utility relocations. And the fourth is focused on developing a project from the final design and seeing the plans, specifications, and estimate. You see that noted at the top, PS&E, plan, specification, and estimate package, being advertised and awarded, and the contract being executed. This is the shortest stage, typically only lasting about 6 months. We summarize, if you can call this a summary, the pre-construction activities a project may need through the project delivery network that's shown here. You'll notice the 4 stages across the top that we just covered. There are more than 24 planning and design disciplines that are involved in the pre-construction phase of most projects, and each has multiple activities that they must complete. This is the challenge and I would say art of pre-construction project delivery, where project managers lead an orchestra of many people to produce a single complete project. A project delivery network can be thought of as a pantry. Each project requires certain activities. Just like a meal you prepare at your home requires certain ingredients, each project doesn't require each one of these, just like each meal doesn't require you to use everything in your pantry. But this lists the activities that likely are necessary It is a complicated process that takes years. I'll say that NCDOT cannot do this completely on our own. We have hundreds of consultant partners that assist us, and we outsource approximately 70% of all of our pre-construction activities. At a high level, we'll walk through the major activities that are completed in the construction phase now. As I mentioned, there are many disciplines that are involved. Beginning with traffic. Traffic forecast is the foundational data that is a starting point for highway capacity projects. This informs the purpose and need of the project. The forecasted future traffic volumes dictate the laneage, the intersection, and interchange types that are viable solutions to maintain a suitable level of service. This traffic forecasting and analysis work ensures that the investment in transportation projects will meet needs well into the future. Surveying is the foundation of all design work. We begin surveys from the air. Utilizing the state plane, we capture photogrammetric mapping and photography, and we also use LiDAR drones for mapping and surveying. Topographic surveys identify all the land features and property boundaries. We also stake right-of-way and easements so property owners can visualize the necessary land the NCDOT must purchase to construct the project. And finally, all property transactions are recorded as legal documents with appropriate maps, just as would be the case for personal property transactions. It is necessary for environmental analysis to be completed for each project to assess the project's impact on the natural and human environment. This is a requirement of the National and State Environmental Policy Act, NEPA and SEPA. The department strives to avoid impacts if possible. If impacts cannot be avoided, we strive to minimize or mitigate these impacts. We also complete public engagement and outreach to share information and encourage participation in the planning and design process from the public. NCDOT is known as a national leader in public engagement by Federal Highways and US DOT. And finally, receiving the necessary environmental permits is a major factor that must precede construction in environmentally sensitive areas. NCDOT must document the environmental decisions for each project and demonstrate that we've met the purpose and need of the project in accordance with NEPA and SEPA law. This requires collaboration with many federal and state agencies and private entities. As mentioned in the previous slide, we seek to avoid the impacts to human and natural resources, and if not possible, certainly to minimize these. There are different types of permits and different permitting requirements based upon the project location and the resources being impacted or in close proximity to the project. Scheduling the permit applications is key to not impact contract awards. Endangered species moratoriums must also be considered when establishing contract time and project durations. Roadway design is the backbone upon which all other designs are connected. It is much more than actual road design, though. Roadway design is the design of the horizontal and vertical location of highway and multimodal transportation projects. The policy established by the Roadway Design Unit aligns with federal requirements and establishes a standard that all designers are to use across the state. Remember, we are known as a good road state, and this is a fundamental reason why, is the high expectation we have in policy. Within a roadway, lighting evaluations and designs are completed to determine areas which warrant roadway lighting. The Roadway Design Unit also supports the field divisions with approval of design exceptions, training, encroachment review, and special projects. And I also mentioned that 14 field divisions also have a small design group in each of them that completes small and low complexity design projects. The hydraulics unit and hydraulics discipline plays a major role in many activities of Division of Highways. They develop and evaluate hydrology and hydraulics for design of highways, bridges, and culverts. Also conduct modeling and analysis to assess water flow and drainage impacts. The department receives drainage complaints and concerns about flooding fairly often, and the hydraulics unit is the one that investigates and actually goes to court to defend the department and the decisions that have been made. Also ensures projects comply with FEMA and the National Flood Insurance Program regulations and minimize flood risk. There must be assurance that NCDOT projects will not raise the 100-year floodplain and endanger upstream structures. Also, they implement best management practices for water quality protection and stormwater regulatory compliance. I'd like to mention the NPDES permit, which stands for the National Pollutant Discharge Elimination Systems Permit. This is a permit the NCDOT holds, and we have received it from North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality. This permit authorizes the Department of Transportation to discharge borrow pit wastewater and stormwater from its construction activities, ferry terminals, material storage facilities, office buildings, rest areas, along with general roadway and railway drainage. North Carolina DOT is one of only a handful of DOTs that holds such a permit in the nation, and this permit allows the department to self-regulate the water discharging from the right-of-way. We're a national leader in this area. Finally, we develop and integrate real-time monitoring and forecasting tools to provide early flood warnings and enhance public safety. This system has saved lives and millions of dollars as it utilizes weather predictions to determine roadway flooding in extreme events. Geotechnical investigation gives insight to subsurface characteristics that cannot be seen. We do this by drilling and analyzing soil and rock under roadways, for bridge foundations, and in slopes to determine soil stability. Geologists analyze soils, and geotechnical engineers complete bridge and culvert foundation designs and retaining wall designs. Additionally, soil strengths are determined, which dictate the type and thickness of pavement needed for roadways. Additionally, geotechnical experts locate underground abandoned storage tanks and remove them, as well as the contaminated soils. The Structures Management Unit is responsible for managing structures from beginning to end, from cradle to grave. Beginning with bridge and culvert design, they also review all shop drawings during the manufacturing process of structural bridges or structural elements. They also inspect over 18,000 structures in the state. Most of these are required to be inspected every 2 years based on federal requirements. They also determine the load rating and load capacity of these bridges based on inspections, and if necessary, will post these bridges for a lower truck weight limit. They also evaluate oversize and overweight permits for bridges, develop preservation, repair, and rehabilitation plans. It's oftentimes more economical to preserve and rehabilitate a bridge than to replace. And then finally, they establish structural design policies used across the state. The Transportation, Mobility, and Safety Division focuses on enhancing safety, mobility, and efficiency across North Carolina's roadways. The Traffic Safety Unit works to reduce crashes and fatalities using data-driven safety improvements and roadway designs. Traffic management enhances safety and efficiency by reviewing work zone traffic control plans and traffic management plans and mitigating impacts near developments and schools. The signing and delineation ensures consistency in roadway signs and pavement markings to support safe and orderly vehicular movements. Transportation Systems Management and Operations is focused on optimizing traffic flow and instant response by designing and managing traffic signals, ITS devices, and real-time traveler information. The Governor's Highway Safety Program funds and coordinates behavioral safety programs to improve safety for drivers, pedestrians, and cyclists. And the Oversize Overweight Permit facilitates safe and efficient movement of oversized and overweight loads while protecting and ensuring that the infrastructure DOT maintains is not compromised. Right-of-way is the real property, which includes land and improvements and rights therein acquired for public use to construct transportation facilities for the betterment and safety of the public. Right-of-way may be acquired through negotiated settlements or condemnation. And in the acquisition of right-of-way, NCDOT must treat all property owners with impartiality, fully explain all legal rights, pay just compensation in exchange for property rights, and furnish relocation assistance if needed. We accomplish this by completing fair market appraisals and negotiating with property owners. Where property is acquired with improvements, we inspect and abate for asbestos before demolishing structures that would be in conflict with construction. The right-of-way unit ensures that all right-of-way activities are completed in accordance with law, and they manage property that is considered residue and seek to dispose of residue and surplus property. Here's a depiction of the time necessary to complete a parcel acquisition and make the property available for construction. On the left side, you see that initial contact being made, deed research and appraisal being requested. See the time frame for appraisals. The appraisals for DOT contracts are much more complicated than a typical residential parcel, and so it's more involved and more timely. And moving to the right, see the relocation evaluation, if necessary, and then the offer and negotiations being made, hopefully leading to a settlement with the property owner. If not, we have the ability to condemn on the property. And then finally, if it is inhabited, a time period to vacate the property, and ultimately clearing any structures that exist so to not impact construction. There are many influences on right-of-way acquisition that are outside of the department's control. Some are shown here. I'll highlight a few, such as personal owner bankruptcy. This really complicates purchase of a parcel as you're dealing with a bank in the process of doing that. Storage tanks that are hidden, wells, septic tanks that are unknown at the time, title issues. There are parcels that are acquired that may have dozens, sometimes even 100 different individuals listed down the line on that title. It's very complicated for the department. Utility coordination is collaborating with all utility owners to understand how a project impacts their infrastructure with the goal of limiting and relocating conflicting utilities. The types of utilities we're speaking of are electric power, water and sewer, communications and fiber and gas. And especially with electric power and gas, you'd be speaking of distribution and transmission lines. Utility personnel must investigate and make prior rights determinations to confirm which utilities are encroaching in the right-of-way and which utilities are located in a privately held easement. Utilities that are located in their own easement will be compensated by the department for their utility relocations. NCDOT often purchases permanent utility easements for electric power companies that have prior rights. The 38 district offices across the state and the utilities unit review and approve over 10,000 encroachments each year. These are requests to receive a permit to encroach into the state right-of-way. Examples being such as utilities being located in the right-of-way, subdivisions desiring to access, driveways that would like to access the state system. This effort is currently funded with General Maintenance Reserve funds, and the department is seeking authority to establish a fee structure to offset some of these costs. So how do all these activities happen in an organized way? It's through leadership by the NCDOT's division engineers and project managers. The department has approximately 140 project managers, and they're located in the field divisions, in the central project management unit, and also in the rail, aviation, and integrated mobility divisions. They lead multidisciplinary teams, and they're responsible to deliver quality projects according to scope, on schedule, and within budget, ultimately culminating in a project being advertised and awarded to the low bid contractor. With that, I'd like to introduce Mr. Boyd Tharrington.
Good morning, everyone. Again, I'm Boyd Tharrington. I'm the Deputy Chief Engineer in the Highway Division, and I'm going to pick up right where Matt left off and really start talking about how NCDOT lets projects.
Interrupt you just real quick, and I'll give the committee a chance to ask any questions of our first speaker if they would like to. Does anyone have any question? Representative Shepard?
Yes, sir. When we're talking about right-of-way acquisition, I've been told recently that we don't have any money to purchase any right-of-ways at this point in time. Is that the case that you know of, or because we may need to try to put some money there, because I know some people are in limbo right now because they've not property hadn't been purchased and others have?
I would need some more details, but the current right-of-way portion, budget portion of pre-construction is funded at about $600 million this year. And I know that we have funds available to continue right-of-way purchases. There may be some unique things about projects whose schedules are being adjusted based on the STIP programming that may be causing complexities, but be happy to gain some more information from you.
Okay.
In general, that's not a problem.
We'll talk afterwards, and thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Representative Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With regard to utilities and moving utilities and during that period of investigation, it's easy enough to know what's there. It's harder to know where it is exactly. And I understand, and I've seen projects that were held up because it took a long time to get the utilities moved by the vendors, I guess would be the proper term. But is there anything that we can do legislatively to encourage them to move their stuff in a more timely manner? Because it can hold up a project for years.
It can. Utility relocation is a challenging topic for the department. It's one that for those utilities that are encroaching into the right-of-way, they have no incentive to move because it is at their expense to relocate. Now, those that have prior easements, we're compensating those for them, but that is rare. There are some other states that have legislation. The authority that the department currently has, we're doing all we can to build partnerships, to communicate the schedules, really communicate the impact if there are delays to utility relocations. It's not uncommon for some projects to have 10 or more utilities that need to be relocated, and oftentimes they have to be done in parallel, not in series, just based on the close proximity in which they are.
Thank you very much.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll move on.
So thank you. Again, I'm Boyd Tharrington. I'm the Deputy Chief Engineer of the Highway Division of DOT. I'm going to pick up kind of where Matt left off, and once we've gone through those planning and design phases and we're ready to advertise and let a contract to get our contractors out there working on the projects. I'm going to discuss that a little bit. I'm also going to talk about some of the delivery methods that we use to deliver our construction contracts, and then talk a little bit about how we administer projects at DOT. So our projects are advertised and let really in two different places, two different ways. One is through our central process or our central letting, and another is each of our 14 highway divisions also advertises and conducts their own lettings. A little bit about our central let. It is managed by our Contract Standards and Development Unit. We have a unit dedicated to the central let. That unit also performs other functions such as plan reviews, assembling proposals, generating our preliminary estimates, our engineers' estimates, and also handling pre-qualification of our contractors. The central letting occurs on the third Tuesday of every month. And typically these are our larger projects. Anything greater than $5 million flows through our central letting process. That ends up being about ballpark around 20% of the projects that we advertise flow through our central process, but it typically represents around 80% of the dollar value. So less projects flow through our central process, but it's about 80% of the dollars. Our highway divisions conduct their own lettings. Each division has 2 lettings per month, and those are limited to projects that are below $5 million. They typically do about between 350 and 400 projects a year flow through our divisions. That does include our SBE contracts and typically smaller stuff, your smaller maintenance contracts, small construction, even some of our resurfacing and smaller bridge projects can flow through our division lettings. I want to shift gears to the different delivery methods that we're utilizing at DOT. The first really fits with kind of what Matt laid out, which is our design, bid, build projects. Just what it says there. We complete the design, we get it ready for advertisement, we receive bids from the contractor, and then we go to work. The second method, the next 3 of these methods are really kind of fit into the category of alternative delivery. First, there is design build. A design build is a process by which we integrate design and construction into a single contract. This method's been used at DOT for a long time now. We first started in the very early 2000s with the design build delivery. We have a unit that's dedicated to nothing but alternative delivery, including design build, and it's been a very successful delivery method for us for a long time. The next two are really kind of newer delivery methods, tools that we have at our disposal. The first there is construction manager general contractor. We received the legislation to pilot this delivery method in 2018 under Senate Bill 99. And this is really a two-phase contracting method. Us, DOT, we have we're managing the design. We're procuring a designer, but we're procuring a contractor early in that design phase, and we're bringing a contractor on board who then works alongside us through the design phase, and then at a certain point, then we negotiate, and if we can come to agreement on pricing, we execute a construction contract. The next is progressive design build. We just received in 2024 the legislation to pilot progressive design build delivery. It's much like design build in that it integrates design and construction, but it is phased into two phases. A pre-construction phase where the team's working on design, and then we transition to a construction phase at a certain level of design. We would transition to a construction phase if we can negotiate pricing. So those are those delivery methods at a very high level. We could probably spend a whole day just really digging into these. So I want to get a little bit into the processes because each one of these delivery methods has a little bit different flavor when it comes to how we procure them. A design bid build is pretty straightforward. We typically advertise our projects for 4 weeks. Some projects do have an 8-week advertisement depending on complexity of the project. We open bids publicly. We evaluate those bids, and we're focused on the lowest responsive bidder. And then we move towards a process to award the project. Design build's a little bit different. We still have a bid opening and a letting date, but the procurement timeline is longer. It is typically broken up into a couple of phases. We issue an RFQ. Teams submit their RFQs. We evaluate those. We have a technical review committee that would be involved in that process of shortlisting down to typically three teams. That team then assembles a technical proposal based on an RFP. We evaluate those proposals, and then we open bids. And when we open bids, we are using a combination of the price proposal along with a technical score, doing some math to determine who is the lowest bidder on that project. But that procurement timeline is anywhere from 6 to 10 months from the time we issue an RFQ to the time we open bids. And then I'll combine CMGC delivery and progressive design build. Both of those processes are typically a two-step process to procure. The first is letters of interest go out. We then shortlist a number of contractors, and then they would respond to an RFQ. A review committee would review those RFQs based on some criteria, and we would score, and then we would select a team or a contractor. It's based on qualifications. So there's no price component there in the selection of the contractor or the design build team. And then again, working through pre-construction phase and transitioning into construction at a later date if we can agree on pricing. All right. Contract admin, this is once the project has been awarded and they're out there going to work. Wanted to highlight the role of our central construction unit. Really has statewide oversight of our construction program. All your policies and procedures related to how we do business and how we manage our projects is really dictated there. Training, technical expertise, auditing of the 14 highway divisions and all the things they're doing on the projects, things of that nature. The actual administration at the project level is handled by our divisions. Each highway division manages their own projects at the project level, typically through a resident engineer's office, who staff the project with engineers and technicians who go out there and do things such as inspection, sampling, testing, measurement, payment, all those aspects that are happening at the project level. And lastly, I think that was it for me. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, we'll take some questions if the committee has any. Seeing none, we'll move on to the next. Whoop, who have we got? Representative Adams?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These projects have inertia. I've observed over time some things that were really kind of distressing, like interchanges that were built that weren't necessary by the time they were built. And when you are dealing with a project and you discover an error in your data, I'll say, in one instance I can name right off the top of my head, you were going to build an interchange because you thought there was a major thoroughfare across a large area and it had been canceled 15 years before. And as a result, you canceled the interchange, but it would have taken out 17 businesses. It would have had a huge impact. How does DOT cope with these big changes in data during the design and construction phase?
Well, I would say hopefully during the construction phase, all that's been ironed out and we don't have to back up and punt because that can be costly and we want to avoid that at all costs. As far as planning and design, Matt, I don't know if you want to take a stab at that from a planning design standpoint.
Yeah, what I'll share is it has to be through close work of the division engineer with the municipalities, understanding what changes in the areas are. Inherent difficulty with DOT projects is, from when they're funded, it often takes years for them to be delivered, and so things can change quite a bit. It just needs to be through that close collaboration with the division engineers and those who are involved in the development.
I'm here to help.
Representative Island?
Since this is an appropriation committee, I'm curious, the 4 different methods are used, design, build, and so forth. Is any economic attitude in the department of which one of those is more economical, or does it depend? What does it depend on? Does economics come into it as far as the cost of it? Is this going to cost 25 million here or 30 million here? I mean,
certainly economics would be considered when our goal is to pick the right delivery method to fit the specific needs of that project. And each one of those delivery methods have strengths when it comes to different aspects, whether it's reducing risk to the department, reducing risk to the contractor, whether it's opportunities to innovate and provide some, opportunities for, where can contractor collaboration really help us and really help to drive down cost. So certain projects certainly lend themselves to some of those alternative approaches where we want to investigate those things and have that innovation. Certain projects lend themselves to just going the traditional path and having everybody compete for lowest bid. So it's really up to the project, but we do consider cost effectiveness of all our delivery methods.
okay, one more follow-up. May or may not be for this group. It may have been for the people the other day, the STEP people. But if you got a project that will never in all of our lifetimes be done through the STEP because of different, it connects to another state and different things like that. But the area is doubling every 10 to 15 years in population, and you need a project. But who do you talk to? Where do you start to move a project from the STEP into the Turnpike Authority? Is that a dynamite question?
Well, I'll take a stab at this, but I think in order for a project to be considered for tolling, I think that's it really starts at the local level through our MPO.
It's already started. It's already started at the MPO level. But who do I talk to? In your start with the secretary, or is it somewhere else we need to go?
I think it's never a bad idea. No, that's Lee Jackson.
Somebody got an answer?
Lee, would you like to respond?
Well, Representative Island, I think I know what project you're talking about, and I'm happy to discuss with you. Lee Jackson, Legislative Director, NCDOT, and Representative Eiler, I'm fairly certain I know which project you're talking about, and I'm happy to talk with you offline, and we can get the specifics to you on how to see about moving forward with that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I think that pretty much wraps it up. Senator Lazaro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a comment in regards to page 9. Can you talk about, obviously this is a very complex process and there's a lot of steps, and I'd like to know what y'all do in terms of trying to work through some of these processes and figure out how to eliminate some of these steps and build efficiencies within the process. One of the things that I see and I have some trouble with is we go through a step process and projects get allocated and they start going through design phases and some of the phases that you talk about, and then because of lack of funding, we may have already done some of the right-of-way purchases, and then they just sit because we don't have the funding. And then years later, maybe the funding may arrive, but then that project cost escalation could be 30, 40%. To me, that's an inefficient process, and I wish we could find a way to either slow down the STIP. Maybe a 10-year STIP is too long. Maybe we should consider a 5-year STIP. But it just seems to me that we tend to get projects on the books, spend a lot of money on them, hold because we don't have the funding. And this may be a higher level comment, and then we start again actually spending 30, 40% more had we continued that project in its normal course. Does that make sense? Do you guys talk about these sort of efficiencies within this chart 9 to eliminate some of that?
Yes, sir. I'll do my best. And
it may be a higher level question, but
certainly I'll do my best. And the page 9 refers to the chart with all the colored boxes on it. So I think what you're hitting at is things we've really focused on in the last year. It's all driven. The fundamental thing is what is the scope of the project and what's the cost. And of course, we have the 10-year STIP as dictated by law, but our goal has been to take an approach similar to what you refer to is for those projects that are in years 6 through 10 of the STIP. What efforts does the department need to take to advance them to a place where we have a confident estimate? I think that we've struggled to do that in the past, and the changes in costs for highway construction, the inflation has exacerbated that we've seen in the last 4 years. And so we are actively working to begin every project in the STIP as it enters the STIP and advance it to a place. Each one may have a different point of a different point where it needs to progress to, but the goal is to have a confident estimate. Some may need to go all the way through selection of alternatives. Some may not need to go that far, but that is the goal so that there is more confidence in the first 5 years of the STIP. And I know that is what we're programming for delivery. The year 6 through 10 is preliminary engineering, the work to be prepared. And so even though we have a 10-year STIP, we're approaching it in a way that's similar to what you described.
Okay, any more questions? If not, we'll move on to Highway Maintenance 101. Emily?
It's this one.
That's the one.
All right, that's the one. Thank you, Sean. Well, good morning, Mr. Chair, co-chairs, members of the committee. It is my pleasure to be with you this morning. My name is Emily McGraw. I'm the Director of Highway Operations in the Division of Highways at NCDOT. And this morning with me is also Mr. Randy Finger, our Operations Program Manager. We are grateful for the opportunity to share with you an overview of maintenance operations. You've just heard about how we plan, design, construct projects across our state, and we have the joy of taking care of those projects once they're completed. For our presentation, I'm going to cover what our assets are, what we own as a state. I will also discuss what governs us, what laws are prevailing for us to follow. And then lastly, I'll talk about funding. Mr. Finger will then discuss planned maintenance, reactive maintenance, and how we plan, execute, and monitor our maintenance programs. And I'll conclude our time with a summary at the end. But before we dive into our assets and understanding maintenance, I think it's important for us to remember how we got here and why North Carolina is so different compared to other states when we talk about asset size and responsibility. In order to understand this, we have to go back a little more than 100 years. The State Highway Commission was established in 1915, and the state had a very concerted effort to collaborate with the Bureau of Public Roads, which we now know as the Federal Highway Administration, to build an integrated roadway network system. At that time, over 100 years ago, our state was rural. Our main industries were agriculture, textiles, and furniture, and we had a population of about 3 million. Time passes, and in 1929, the Great Depression occurs. And leaders across our state, were trying to figure out how do we get out of this tough financial situation. And one of the recommendations that was made during that time frame with the Great Depression was to consolidate similar government efforts by agencies. And so in 1931, with much discussion and some dissent, the North Carolina General Assembly passed a bill that the State Highway Commission would take responsibility of 45,000 existing county roads. A 1-cent gas tax was added, taking the gas tax from 5 cents to 6 cents. Essentially, the state transitioned its responsibilities of 9,000 centerline miles to 54,000 centerline miles overnight. This is key in thinking about how North Carolina strategically maintains its assets. So let's talk about those assets. We have a large portfolio and it is very varied. And we like to think of our assets in two main categories. We have structural assets. Think of those as pavement. We have 167,000 lane miles of pavement across our state. We also have 13,700 bridges that we're responsible for, and over 390,000 pipes in our roadways, managing all that water. In addition to our structural assets, we have functional assets. These are things like signs, markers, markings, traffic signals, drainage features, curb and gutter, guardrails. Think of those items within the right-of-way, those items that are fence line to fence line. Varied assets to maintain and a great volume of them. So how large is our road network today? Well, 100 years ago, it was 54,000 miles. It's a little bit bigger today. So what we have for you here are three shapes of the state, or three sizes of our state of North Carolina. What we're showing in the first map is our interstate routes. When we think of our interstates, they carry the highest level of traffic across our roadways. Those are your I-40s, I-95, I-77, I-85. And about 4% of our lane miles are interstates. 7,000 lane miles are interstates. Our next size system is our primary system. Think of those as your US and your NC routes. US 64, US 1, US 15, 501, your North Carolina routes, NC 12, NC 9, NC 24, 27. We have about 35,000 lane miles on our primary network, consisting of 21% of our system. And then last, our secondary routes. We have 125,000 lane miles of secondary routes. Those are your SRs, subdivision roads, arterial routes. 75% of our state is comprised of the secondary system. And I make note of this because most states do not have the responsibility of the secondary road system. In North Carolina, simply put, roads are either maintained by the state, a municipality, or they're privately held. So now that we've talked about our assets, let's talk about legislation that governs what we do. There are, the first one is our Maintenance Operations Performance Analysis Report. We have state requirements that we must follow. GS 136-44-3 requires that NCDOT establish performance standards for the maintenance and operation of the state highway system. In each even-numbered year, the Department of Transportation surveys the condition of the system and prepares a report of the findings of that survey. The report provides both quantitative and qualitative descriptions on the condition of our system. This report covers the cost to meet and sustain performance standards and provides information related to the system condition and funding. And for your awareness, NCDOT just submitted this report to the General Assembly this past December, and it's my understanding that you're going to receive a presentation on the report from the Fiscal Research Division next week. The second requirement related to maintenance is for the Highway Maintenance Improvement Program. GS 136-44-3A defines this as a needs assessment report, and it provides framework for a 5-year improvement plan for pavements, bridges, and general maintenance programs. This is an annual requirement. In fact, our field staff are in their workshop, so to speak, working on these plans, and they will present these plans to the Board of Transportation a little bit later this spring. Ultimately, they'll be approved and published on our NCDOT website. The third statute that provides framework for our maintenance programs is GS 136-1805. This legislation provides timeframes for NCDOT to be responsive to citizen concerns and reports. And we've created a system, we call it CARS, the Citizen Action Request System. And this is the timeframes that we're responsive. So when we receive a report on a pothole, we are supposed to repair those within 2 business days. When we receive a safety-related concern, it's within 10 business days, and non-safety items are within 15 business days. In addition to state requirements, we have federal requirements related to maintenance. The first is the Highway Performance Monitoring System, the HPMS. It's a national highway information system that includes data to the extent, condition, performance, use, and operating characteristics of the nation's highways. In simple terms, it's an annual condition report that we provide information to the National Highway System regarding the National Highway System. It's on our interstates and primaries, and we provide this annually to FHWA. The second is the Transportation Asset Management Plan, or as we refer to as TAMP. It's a risk-based approach for preserving asset conditions and performance of the National Highway System. This is updated every 4 years, and it was last updated in 2022. Consistency reviews are conducted annually with FHWA. So let's talk about funding. We've talked about our assets and our state and federal requirements, so let's discuss the funds that are used to orchestrate this work. There are several buckets that address maintenance activities and maintenance operations, and I'll discuss each one of them in a little more detail shortly. Displayed is, I refer to this as a clock, this circular graphic of all the different funding sources. This is our maintenance appropriation for fiscal year 25. In total, it was just shy of $2.3 billion, and we are grateful for your support in funding us this current fiscal year. Starting at noon and walking around the circle, about $923 million is in our general maintenance reserve, $94 million in emergency GMR, $119 million for roadside environmental work, $630 million for contract resurfacing, $86 million for pavement preservation, $330 million for the bridge program, and $85 million for bridge preservation. Earlier, we talked about our assets, and the main funding sources used to address one of our structural assets, our pavements, is contract resurfacing and pavement preservation. In total, 32% of the maintenance funds are directed towards our pavements. When we think of contract resurfacing, that typically consists of hot mixed asphalt, and it usually is a single layer applied on a surface course. This is a picture of that contract resurfacing activity. The second program, pavement preservation, is comprised of numerous treatments. A major treatment that we do use with pavement preservation activities, it's called a chip seal, and that consists of a layer of asphalt emulsion embedding aggregate on top. Another structural asset that is addressed with maintenance funds is our bridges. About 20% of the maintenance funds are designated for bridges. Poor condition bridges are replaced through the bridge program, and we preserve and address critical fines or acute maintenance issues with the bridge preservation funds. So general maintenance, reserve, emergency GMR, and roadside environmental. This is the grouping that's everything but the pavements and bridges. So our roadside environmental funding, this addresses items such as mowing, litter removal, and brush and tree control. Last year, our division supplemented their roadside environmental work with some of the general maintenance reserves as well. General maintenance reserves, GMR. This includes pipe replacements, drainage work, shoulder work, sign work, as well as responses to citizen concerns. The emergency general maintenance reserve is used to address snow and ice response, which we've done a lot of that this year so far, as well as non-federally declared emergencies. And so with that, I'd like to transition to Mr. Randy Finger. We've discussed our assets, our funding, and Mr. Finger is going to discuss planned maintenance, reactive maintenance, and how we plan, execute, and monitor maintenance.
Okay, thank you, Henry. Before we move on to the next speaker, let's see if anybody has any questions regarding the first part. Representative Eiler.
I honestly try not to have a question every time, but so far it hasn't worked. On the Mopar, I've been hearing like a grading system says, well, this road needs to be improved. Well, that's a 6 or that's an 8, or is it some kind of a Mopar puts a grade on it and then you prioritize based on how bad the grade is, or how does that sort of work?
Yes, sir. And my understanding is you'll hear a lot more details of this next week, but there are grading systems. We have those for our structures, for bridges. We have those for pavements as well. And then we also have a system where we're doing this on a corridor basis as well.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Representative Adams first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In all of this, there's one system that we will deal with momentarily after we leave this building that I haven't heard mentioned or certainly not emphasized, and that's the signalization system across the state. Where does the operation and maintenance of the signalization system fit in?
It's part of our traffic program, which some of that is funded with the general maintenance reserve.
Representative Branson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions. The Interstate 40, and I noticed you mentioned the weather and difficulty that we've had. I noticed we've gone to using brine to treat a lot of the roadways. Driving in on 40 this morning through the construction zone from 4085 split all the way in through Raleigh. This 2-day period of potholes, I can't believe we haven't heard some disgust and angst over having to dodge craters coming in. So I'm curious, in the 2-day piece here, I know there may be some resurfacing once some of that stuff gets through, but what can we do to maybe take a look at that and try to repair?
Sure. Well, after the snow and ice happens, we do have that plethora of potholes that do show up. 'Tis the season for that as well. And our maintenance forces are out repairing potholes. We have a large system, and when we're made aware of them, we certainly can address them, but that is something that we are certainly working on, and those are certainly addressed as well through our resurfacing programs this summer. But specifically the 40 and 85, we can certainly look into that as well.
Yeah, it's fairly rough. One other quick question. From an environmental standpoint, I've heard some conversation on folks that are traveling the Blue Ridge Parkway, and the scenic overlooks have a tendency to, where used to they were more maintained and cleared, and now they've become more overgrown. Is there any reason that you can mention from an environmental impact, or maybe a wash, or the reason for those to be growing?
This is for the Blue Ridge Parkway, sir?
Yes.
That is not under our jurisdiction.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Okay, we'll move on to our next speaker, Mr. Finger.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, co-chairs, members of the committee. It's my pleasure to be here this morning. My name is Randy Finger. I'm the Operations Program Manager for the department. And when we think about maintenance and how we deliver our programs, maintenance is really split up into two separate groups. We have groups in the 14 highway divisions that put our plans together, they execute our plans, they help monitor our plans, and these are the folks that are really the boots on the ground folks that are doing the work to our assets to maintain them. We have folks in our central units that are field support for these field units, where we do condition assessments, we look at policy, guidance, standard operating procedures, and things of those natures to really support the field units such that they can do their maintenance, do it efficiently, do it effectively, and do a good job with it. So when you think about maintenance, we have plans. Emily talked about the Highway Maintenance Improvement Program. We affectionately refer to these as the MIPS, but there's three of them. There's the Highway Maintenance Improvement Program, which is really geared towards our pavements, which is paved for with the contract resurfacing money and pavement preservation money that Emily spoke of. Next, we have our Routine Maintenance Improvement Program. This is for all of those other things that are not really bridges or pavements. So this is signals, striping, ditches, signs, all of those other things. And then we have our Bridge Maintenance Improvement Program. And this is really paid for with our bridge program pot of money, and this is looking at replacing our low-scoring bridges that need replacement. And then sometimes things just fail that we're not aware of. It's not planned, but it's got to be fixed. It's got to be fixed quickly to maintain mobility and the safety of the traveling public. When this happens, it's typically done with general maintenance reserve funds. Sometimes we have emergencies. We have snow and ice events. We've had several winter storms this spring or this winter that, we have to go out, plow the roads, brine the roads, things of that nature. In the mountains, we have landslides. We have weather events. And then we have safety issues. Guardrail gets hit. It's a safety issue. We need to be out there and quickly fix that before maybe doing some other planned maintenance to make sure that everybody is safe in the traveling public. And then when we're talking about the unplanned maintenance, there's the planning for the unplannable. Emily spoke about CARS, the Citizen Action Request System. So this past calendar year in 2024, the department had over 65,000 requests from citizens to look at issues or complaints or whatever it may be. To kind of put that in perspective, that's almost 13 requests per division per day. So those all have to be investigated. We all have to go out and look at them and see if they warrant repair. And is it a pothole that needs to be fixed in 48 hours? Is it a safety issue that needs to be fixed in that 10 work business days? Or is it another issue that needs to be fixed in 15 days? So this, again, takes away time from our larger plan that we have put together. Spoke of storms, snow and ice. We have a storm, we come through, we put our crews to work brining the roads, and then we're plowing the roads after the storm. That's a short-lived emergency event that we deal with, but that does take away people away from doing our planned maintenance. And then there's the really big events. There's the hurricanes that come. So if you think about Hurricane Helene, directly affecting divisions 11, 13, and 14 with over 9,000 damage sites, that is a massive impact to their planned maintenance. But it not only affects those divisions, it also affects all of the other divisions across the state. We will send people from all over the state to affected areas to help with the rebuild effort, with the immediate response after the storm, to restore connectivity, to help out and things like that. So even those divisions that may not have been directly impacted by the storm do have impacts to their plan because they are assisting with storm response. So looking a little bit more into how do we actually put our plans together, essentially, first we need to know how much money do we have. So we get obviously appropriations from you to all of our different funding pots, and then we allocate that out to our 14 field divisions. We don't do a simple, here's the appropriation, there's 14 divisions, divide by 14, everybody gets a fair share. We actually use number of assets, condition of asset, estimated need to really look at what does that division need to address what they are maintaining and what the condition is. So in this example, this is Division 5, which is the local division here in Raleigh. For general maintenance reserve, that was approximately about 40% of our appropriation. But for Division 5, it actually ends up being about 49% of their allocation. So next, we need to know what we have, what condition that it's in, where do we need to do the work. So we have a lot of assessments that we do centrally to, again, support the field staff in putting their plans together. We have the pavement condition survey. This is a 100% annual survey of all pavements that we maintain. On the primary and interstate system, we have an automated survey that vans drive down the road, take pictures of all the pavement, and can automatically detect the cracks and all of the distresses, and ultimately give us a 0 to 100 score of how good or bad is that piece of pavement. On our secondary system, we still do what's called a windshield survey, and it is literally two folks in a truck looking out the windshield, driving down the road slowly, taking notes and trying to gather how much cracking, what kind of distresses are on the pavements to help, again, score those pavements. Next, we do a unpaved road survey. We do this about every 4 years to go out and collect data on how many homes are on the roads, are they serving any businesses and things of that nature to help us set the priority of paving those roads. What order do we need to be paving those roads in? Then we have our Assessment Inventory Collection, or AIC. This is for our smaller maintenance pipes and storm pipes. This is where we have 300,000 plus pipes across the state. So can't do that in a year. So we take a 5-year approach where we try to do 20% of all of the pipes every year, so that our field units have up-to-date information as they can have to determine which pipes may be able to be preserved and need a little bit of work, or are about to fail and need to be fully replaced. Then we have our bridge inspections, which Matt talked about a little bit for the National Bridge Inspection Standards, or NBIS. So these are our bridges and very big pipes. This is a 100% biannual survey, so we do it every pipe gets surveyed every 2 years, and all of this data gets used as the starting point for our plans. So at a high level, we know how much money we have, we know the condition of our assets. We then use our asset management systems and other software packages to look at what is the theoretical best thing we can do to preserve our system and to get the most bang for our buck. We then provide those recommendations to the field divisions, where they apply their local knowledge of what's going on to the plans and adjust them accordingly. So think of here in Raleigh, there's a lot of municipalities that we have to deal with because of we may want to come resurface a road, but they have a water or sewer utility project plan that we don't want to resurface the road and then have them come right behind, cut the road open to replace a pipe. So there's coordination that has to go on. There may be a new shopping center or economic development that's happening that, while the road might not be in distress now, in need treatment right now. But in 2 years, if we don't do anything, because of all the heavy trucks and everything coming in for the construction, we'll destroy the road. So we need to get ahead of it. That's what the divisions are doing with their local knowledge. So we put all that together. We get our 5-year work plan put together, one for pavements, one for bridges, and one for routine maintenance. We send it off to the chief's office. They review it and approve it. And then it gets presented to the Board of Transportation, where the board then reviews and votes on it. And once they approve it, it is posted on the department's website as required by legislation. So how do we execute these plans? There's a couple different ways we do this. There's 4 main ways. First is through DOT staff. And then there are 3 contracting methods that we really use. So starting with DOT staff, these are typically items that we do through GMR, emergency GMR, bridge preservation, and roadside environmental. So these are things like, potentially going out and patching those potholes. A sign gets knocked down. We go out and replace the sign. Then on the contracting side, we have traditional low bid contracts we put out. This is used primarily for our bridge program for replacing bridges. It's used for contract resurfacing and preservation funds to put contracts out to do that work. And then roadside environmental uses this as well for a lot of their items like mowing and litter pickup. We then also use on-call contractors, and these contracts are contracts that have basically, kind of think of it as a toolbox where we can go in and grab a very specific tool that we need to use that we may not have the expertise or the personnel to do in-house. So we can call a contractor and say, we need you to show up to do this work at this site and get the work done efficiently. And then we do use on-call engineering firms, and we use them for everything we do. Everything from doing those assessments that I talked about, to doing design work, to doing ultimately the inspections of the work that needs to be done. So how do we monitor our plans? Basic idea here is it's a cycle. We start with those assessments. Those inform us of what we need to do to develop our plan. So we do the plan development. We then execute that plan. We execute that plan through all those contracting methods. And then we are also adjusting our plan as we go because of conflicts with other projects, funding issues. Bids may be coming back higher than we expected, so we can't do as much as we had planned. Or the opposite, we may be getting lower bids than we had expected, and we can actually move some of our planned work up. So that's the adjustment of the plan, and then ultimately we cycle back through and do another round of assessments. And that second round of assessments kind of indicates how well we've been doing with our plans. Are our scores going up? Are our scores going down? Are we kind of maintaining where we were? And that same assessment then is also informing the next round of creating the next year's plan. And I'm going to turn it back over to Emily to wrap up.
Okay, why don't you do that, and then we'll answer questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy. Well, as stewards, the cycle just continues. As we receive direction from those that we are held accountable to, you, our elected officials who provide funding for this work, we continue planning the work, delivering the work, monitoring the work, and report back to you, and the cycle continues. At the end of the day, we want to be good stewards of the assets that we're entrusted to maintaining, and we want to be good stewards of the dollars you entrust us to take care of those assets. At the beginning of this presentation, we talked about the past, but let's just take a minute to contemplate our future. Our population is 10.5 million and growing quickly. North Carolina is forecasted to have a population of over 12.5 million in the 2030s. We are no longer just a rural state. We are a rural and urban state. People and businesses have figured out this is a great place to work, build businesses, and raise families. It's a wonderful place to live. We have challenges in taking care of this 81,000-mile system and 13,700 bridges. And we've been doing this for over 100 years. The origins go back 100 years. We can meet these challenges of taking care of a large infrastructure. We have a history of doing this. We've done it in the past, and we can do it in the future with your support. We truly do appreciate your time and your support as we take care of our state highway system. Thank you. I lost your page. Give me some.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the presentation, and we'll take some more questions if the committee has any. Representative Adams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a heads up on a couple of roads that could you might give your attention to on maintenance. You might try North Wilmington and North Salisbury Street. Check them out.
Okay, any other questions? If not, that's all the business we have before the committee. The committee will stand adjourned. Thank you.